everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of Friday I'm hoping that we are going to have a good and sound connection this week because I'm joined by an amazing guest. And in fact, let me see if I can. I got to do a couple things here while I get us live. So give me 1 second. Hey, ChatGPT, can you introduce my guest while I get us live here on Facebook?
Certainly. Here's the introduction for your Facebook Live session. Hello, Facebook Live viewers. Welcome to our special session today. We are incredibly fortunate to have with us Hitendra Patil, a visionary in the fields of accounting and artificial intelligence. Hitendra is the author of Rise of The Aiccountants, a book that has been a game changer in understanding the role of AI in the accounting profession. In his book, Hitendra offers a compelling blend of practical insights, real-world examples, and actionable strategies guiding accountants through the AI revolution. From demystifying AI fundamentals to providing a roadmap for its implementation, his work is a beacon for professionals navigating the rapidly evolving landscape of accounting and technology. As we dive into this conversation, we're set to uncover the profound impacts of AI on accounting, discuss the future of the profession, and explore how accountants can harness the power of AI to transform their practices. Hitendra, it's an absolute honor to have you join us today. This introduction should seamlessly lead.
Cool, right?
Yeah. So should I be thanking you or should I be thanking ChatGPT for that?
In this case, it's definitely going to be ChatGPT, and I mean, it's amazing the way ChatGPT has really blown up over the world when it comes to artificial intelligence. But what's amazing is that you were writing your book well before ChatGPT was released, and before people knew what generative AI was. You were working on this book, and I think you told me earlier you've been working on this for over 3 years now, right?
Correct. That's right. Yep, absolutely. Every time I thought, okay, this book is now ready to be released, AI was moving forward.
Right.
I was waiting, trying to adjust and all that stuff. Right? If you look at the history, though, it was even before, more than 3 years ago, I actually tried out IBM Watson.
Right. Yeah.
And first time I read about it, was like, oh, this seems like magic. Let me go and get it. I installed it on my home computer and all that, and tried to figure out what the heck is happening there. And I thought it will work on its own.
Right.
And then I figured, oh no, I need to provide it some data. Without data, there is no AI.
Yeah.
Right. And then I say, wait a second. Who has the maximum amount of data in our profession? I think those are the guys who are going to be making a killing from this AI, right?
Right. Right.
And then I figured, okay, I need to go deeper. I need to go and find how exactly AI works, how exactly it learns, how does it convert things into a natural language and things like that, right?
Right.
That is what I tried to put in the book without being too technical. I
Right.
try to oversimplify at times.
Yeah.
But I think that's where it was. And then when ChatGPT hit the market, I said, wait, I can't wait
Yeah.
anymore.
There's no
I
more
don't
waiting.
know.
Yeah. This book has to be released
Right.
now. And so you went live with the book, I think, in February, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Which was right on the heels of ChatGPT
Right.
and everything that started and the buzz. And so people must have been, chomping at the bit to talk to you about
Yeah.
everything that you had already been working on for these
Right.
past 3 years.
Right.
And I mean, that's a big giant leap from IBM Watson to generative AI.
That's right.
Has the release of ChatGPT changed your perspective at all, or do you still have the same perspective on where AI is back from where you saw it? Has your predictions of where it's going to go changed at all?
So it did in terms of how layman, masses of people look at it, not just accounting professionals,
Right.
but anyone,
Yeah.
because ChatGPT kind of packaged it into a very familiar chat format.
Right.
The learning curve suddenly dropped.
Yeah.
And from that angle, people got interested in AI pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It sounded pretty natural. Language generation and those capabilities based on machine learning were always in the books or cooking.
Yeah.
It only got much more visibility because it got simplified.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
And it's getting simpler and simpler. I mean,
Simpler,
we
yes.
have the big news is Google Gemini
Yeah.
announced their release, had some really, really impressive demos.
Right.
Unfortunately, not available yet to test and play around with, unfortunately, as I am chomping at the bit to get my hands on that. And it's now got the ability not just text, and GPT gave us the ability to, to see and hear, well, at least from a picture perspective.
Mhm.
But with Gemini, we've now got video,
Yeah.
which seems pretty impressive. And I guess that's just going to make it even easier and more approachable, for people to adopt into your business, right?
Absolutely. And I've been talking about this for almost a year now after the book was released, that there would be an interdisciplinary confluence, what I call, meaning just like how we human beings figure out things about the world through senses.
Right.
You can see things, you can hear things, you can smell, taste, touch, right? And then our brain kind of figures out all these inputs coming to us at a very rapid pace, and we still make sense of the world.
Right.
Like that now, if a system can get these inputs in different formats, audio, video, text, whatever, hopefully smell someday,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And it makes sense in real time or near real time. So it's essentially just following a human evolution cycle,
Right.
which is a fantastic way to look at in terms of technologists. If you're a technologist, you want to develop technology that's more leverageable, more easily usable by human beings.
Right.
You kind of mimic what human beings are doing.
Yeah.
It can be scary at times,
Yeah.
but for me, it's fascinating.
And it's also evolving at an unbelievable pace,
Absolutely.
right? And I think, we were talking earlier about the fact that, it's far more approachable than it's ever been. Like, it's not as difficult. You have these pre-trained models, so you don't need to load all the data like
Right.
you were talking about, which you had to do back in the day with
Yeah.
Watson. You've got these pre-trained models that you can now, with GPTs, train with additional information.
Right.
But what's interesting is that, even though there's wide adoption with people picking up and signing up to GPT, or Chat GPT, there's not really wide adoption as far as people implementing this in the real significant way in their business, other than, hey, I'm using Firefly as note takers, or I'm using QuickBooks, which has got AI built into it.
Right.
And I guess there has been a lot of fear, at least the people that I'm talking to, that it's changing so rapidly that they're hesitant to start trying to implement it in this business, for the fear that by the time they do, it's all changed again. What's your thought and take on that? Should people be holding off, or should they be diving in head first and getting involved in AI now, as opposed to waiting for the final product, so to speak?
Yeah, I think if you look at your education system, you're going to school. Can you say that, okay, I'm going to wait 8 years and go straight to college? There's no way you
No.
can do
Yeah.
that, right? So same way, AI will progress so quickly.
Hmm.
And if you don't grasp the fundamentals, which is what I always recommend, you
Yeah.
at least should know how AI is created, how it learns on its own, and how it works. Then
Right.
you can figure out practically every single tool that comes out in the market.
Yeah.
So I would rather say, okay, go ahead and test it out. There are firms in the accounting profession that have, let's say, 1% of top line dedicated to experimenting with technology,
Right.
test kitchen kind of.
Yeah.
So do that. Okay, otherwise you're going to be suddenly overwhelmed, because one is tools like external tools like ChatGPT, which is not yet part of, let's say, many accounting or tax or audit software, which obviously is making inroads.
It's making
that
inroads. I
already.
mean, you got Hector's tool, Right Tool.
Yeah.
He's using that in
Yeah,
ways.
right.
We've seen it in other peripheral
Right.
applications where it's being used in email. Gmail's got it rolled out now. It's becoming more and more a part of what we're doing. But you're right. I mean, it's not part of Intuit yet, although there's lots of discussions
Yeah.
about what they are doing on their
Right.
own.
Yeah.
And exciting to see what they're going to roll out as far as their generative AI.
Correct.
And you were there yesterday. I don't know if you got any insights, anything you can share with us.
Yeah. So from what I have seen, what is publicly available,
Yeah.
is the assist model that they are bringing in. And if you look at it, it's no rocket science really. It's just a way of making things easier for you.
Right.
So as I said, there is no data, there's no AI.
Yeah. And Intuit has a
Yeah,
huge amount of
and
data.
that is specific to our profession.
Right. Right.
So from that angle, what the AI tool can do within those solutions that they have is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
And how is simple. Today we look at data and try to make sense from it.
Right.
Tomorrow the AI will make sense for it, because it knows how are you using data to
Yeah.
make sense of what.
Right.
And they know it, right?
Yeah.
And it's easier. Yeah.
Now,
Mhm.
the problem with that
Mhm.
is sort of the validation process, right? QuickBooks has a ton of data,
Mhm.
and the data that's in there that's prepared by my fellow accountants and bookkeepers
Mm.
is clean and
Mm.
great.
Right.
We have a lot of small business owners
Mm.
who, any accountant who has worked with anyone who's brought them their own set of books
Mm.
knows there's a lot of crappy data
Right.
out there. Is that going to skew the models? Is that going to, like, what's going to be the validation process to ensure that what has gone into the majority of QuickBooks files, which might be owner manager created,
Uh,
which might actually be garbage, and
Mhm.
it's garbage in, garbage out, right? Like if
Right.
you load if you pre-train your model
Mhm.
with a whole bunch of crappy data,
Mhm.
that model's no good, right? And we know, like, when we look at the AI features and functionality that we have in QuickBooks today, there's a lot of complaints about how it's classifying transactions because that data is, I guess, potentially problematic. What are your thoughts on how an entity like Intuit is going to overcome that issue around quality data and training their model effectively?
Very interesting question, I must say, Andrew. Let me take a little bit of an analogy here. We go by Uber and Lyfts of the world.
You're right.
There is a recommended directions or path that Uber's app would tell, and the driver would look at the traffic and take a detour and go. So
Right.
what essentially is doing is training Uber's or Lyft's AI model to
Right.
know if this is the situation.
Was it
Here are the
faster?
things, right?
Right.
This is how you can manipulate or maneuver given the situation.
Right.
Now
But
you
the
bring
problem is, if the user says add
yeah.
and accept, is that then validating with the model that that's right, even though it may not be right?
It may not be right. It's just one of the choices.
Yeah.
As long as the system understands there are like a million choices,
Hmm.
and 83% of the time, these three choices are the ones that work the best, and that becomes a suggestion. The
Right.
same way, I'm sure Intuit has that data, and for that matter, accountants cleaning the data.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you know the before and after values, and you let AI do its magic and figure out, what are the messes that are resolved by which methods and which are
Right.
the most common methods. In that case, AI will become more intelligent. So,
Right.
which means you're not looking only at the correct or corrected data, but
Yeah.
you're also looking at what was the mess and how that got resolved.
Right.
And today, for example, if you're looking at classification based on rules, that's more of a data matching, not really AI.
Right. Right.
AI is when somebody looks at back end of, let's say, 5 billion transactions of the same type and how they were classified, corrected. Then AI has more sense.
Right.
Okay, so we're going away from the rules and letting AI figure out the rules by itself.
Right.
When that happens, that accuracy levels will be phenomenal.
Right. And is that the fundamental difference from machine learning to artificial intelligence? Is
Yeah.
that really what we're talking about? That translation, right?
Yeah, programmed versus not programmed.
Right,
Kind of
right.
thing.
Into the black box of
Yeah,
artificial
exactly.
intelligence
That's
where
right.
you put something in and you get something out, but you don't really know how it got there.
That's correct. Yeah, that's the explainability issue that AI has.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Now, when it comes to artificial intelligence and it now being this amazing tool that, as you said, we can't put off university. We've got to start implementing this. It can be scary and approachable for people to figure out, like, what's the step by step process of how I'm going to actually implement this. That's one of the things that you've done in your book, right? Like, you have like over 100 examples in your books of,
Right.
of ways that people could use this.
Yeah.
You've got checklists.
Mhm.
So, like, what are, like, without giving away, the secret sauce to your book, and we'll share with everyone the link, which is available. The book's available on Amazon. I do encourage everyone to go and buy a copy of the book if you're interested in, implementing artificial intelligence in your business. This is an amazing book, specifically addressing the rise of AI in the accounting world.
Mhm.
But can you give us some tips or some checklists that people should be going through for implementing AI into their practice?
Yeah, it's like, for example, if you're a professional accountant offering service, you're using practically, let's say, 15 odd software, different types of software.
Right. Yeah.
Your core accounting, tax, audit software, around that, several other tools, right? So first and foremost, you look for, what's coming in your software as AI.
Right.
Because now you're not going to make a wholesale change, or you're not going to take out a big component of your tech stack, but
Right.
you're kind of riding the AI wave within the solution. Two, are there possibilities for integrating any third-party tools on your own for your practice? Most of the big vendors in the profession are already integrating third-party tools. They're not limiting it to their own AI development. Because
Right.
what is already developed, which is miles ahead right now,
Yeah.
why redevelop that?
Right.
So chat GPTs of the world are coming into the accounting and tax softwares and all that,
Right.
which are, again, because they're natural or language processing based, language generating models. Most of the stuff that it would do is generate language. So for example, you have a financial statement, you see some ratios and things like that, and it can generate those little emails that you otherwise send to your clients as
R-
insights. It can generate right straight from that data, so that
Right.
effort goes down, right?
But we've also seen with ChatGPT,
Mm.
it's not so good at math,
Yeah.
not the way we would expect an
Right.
AI
Correct.
to be great at math.
Mm.
It's a language. It's
It's a language model,
yeah.
and glad that you asked this question. And it's trained on the universal web data.
Right.
So obviously, web has lots of garbage, right?
Yeah.
But it's such a large model that it can leave aside the garbage. But it's trained on the languages, right? What's the next good word? The
Right.
next most
The most
plausible word,
logical word in the,
correct?
yeah.
That's how it is. So mathematically, it's not doing calculations per se like calculators, but it is becoming better.
Right.
But when we talk about AI coming into tools that or solutions that we use as accountants, then those are trained not on language but on numbers,
Right.
right? So if I can say something like natural numbers model,
Yeah.
that could be good.
Well, and then
Mm.
you also have the ability when you
Mm.
bring it into your system to combine machine learning like
Yeah,
that, programmatic logic,
right.
math,
Mm.
as well as AI, right?
Right.
And so you
Exactly.
can get the best of both worlds
Correct.
by building that out into your system. And I mean, we're seeing amazing value in the way that we're able to do that by leveraging um, tools like Zapier and Make
Right.
to create interactions
Mm.
between the language models and the other tools that we're already being able to use, right?
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yes. So from a simple data point of view, one is you're creating data, and
Right.
software has evolved so much with all sorts of validation. It generally doesn't allow you to push through a wrong, let's say, a tax thing, right? Versus AI, which learns from that data. So
Yeah.
already created data versus what you're creating.
Right.
If the data creation tools are very much mature, and AI can go and find insights that otherwise you'll have to spend like hours to figure out.
Right.
And if we marry both of them, now you have a triple whammy tool in your hand.
Right. So the first step is you go out and you find these
Correct.
additional tools.
Right.
And what's the next step after that?
The next step is you figure out what's the purpose for which you want to really, not for just testing out an AI tool.
Right. You've
Are
got to
you-
look at your workflows,
Correct.
understand and take a look at where in my existing workflows
Right.
are these tools going to fit in because they may cover a wide variety, a small
Right.
portion. Where's the value in my existing workflow? So it's like anything, I guess. We have to everything starts with analyzing where your business is at
Right.
now,
Mhm.
like defining your workflow, defining your process.
Yeah.
And I guess that really, from your perspective, I know from my perspective, we're an ISO 9001 registered firm,
Mhm.
which is pretty rare and unusual. So we've been big on documenting
Yeah.
workflows and processes.
Mhm.
But I guess that's really like that is actually the first step is documenting those systems and those
Yeah.
workflows.
I think before that, I go a little one step ahead is find what you cannot do right now for your clients or what you want to enhance,
Right.
because you always buy a software not as a software. It's not, you're not buying a tool, but you're buying what you can do with it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So from that angle, start with the end client in mind, because that's your service you want to differentiate or you want to enhance, and then come back. Most of the time, if you fulfill that goal, that look, I can do this better for my clients, or I
Right.
can do something extra for my client, which the clients are looking for,
Right.
and hence likely willing to pay.
Yeah. Which is the most important
Right,
thing.
and then you come back, and most of the time that will have an impact on your internal processes as well,
Right.
because some of the things that AI can do can cut short maybe 3 steps in your process.
Right.
That's going to be efficiency and productivity gains for you, right?
Right.
And the first goal is clients. The second goal is your own internal firms, productivity and efficiency and
Right.
utilization, those kinds of things. If those things happen, then you know that you have a case in hand where you can invest more time and money in actually implementing the AI tool.
Right. And then you've got to come back and monitor, test, and evaluate.
Yes.
Do you have any processes or suggestions on how people could test and evaluate that this is having a meaningful impact on their business?
Yeah, pretty much similar to any software. You first figure out, okay, here are the 3 tools that look pretty much in sync with what you're doing.
Right.
Now we want to test it, take some data out, just like, copy everything,
Right.
don't put it on live, and then test it with a couple of tools, run through some iterations and figure out what's really happening that was not happening before or happening better now. And then you actually implement in the live. Tell the client, we're going to do it for
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah,
Hey, don't worry, we are running a parallel thing.
yeah,
And if it works, if it's perfectly well, according to your expectation, then you expand. Then
right,
you expand to your entire client base. Then you expand to all your prospects.
right,
Any prospect that comes in should know that you're going to be using AI, and you're going to be, as an accountant, leveraging your human expertise to apply more on your situations. In fact, that's another thing that will happen is your clients will know, your prospects will know that AI can do a lot of things,
right.
and they might generate those insights themselves. They may or may not understand it from accounting standpoint,
Yeah,
but they would rather expect you to apply your human expertise onto their specific business or tax situations, right? So after that happens, are you going to be able to kind of send some reports that you're sending today? The client will say, well, I can figure this out myself, right?
right,
So what is the additional thing that you're doing as a human accountant?
right,
Can I pick your brains? That will become a most common line, I
right.
guess.
Yeah. Well, and we've got our first question coming in
Uh-huh.
from the chat,
Mm,
which comes in from Kasim,
mm.
who says, within accounting, do you think it's more important to incorporate automation rather than AI because large language models are not very good at number crunching? So, what's your thought about implementing automation versus AI? Or, I mean, does it have to be, I'm a big believer that it doesn't have to be either or, right? We're not in a binary situation here. There's a world of abundance. Why not
Yeah,
both? Yeah.
let me go back to my that interdisciplinary confluence thing.
Right.
Today, large language model exists outside of the tools that we use. They
Right.
are making inroads, they're getting integrated, right?
Mhm.
And let's say the big vendors, and once they bring that AI in, they already have automation tools inside. They have now AI tools added to the same thing. You're looking at one screen
Right.
and everything is happening behind the screen, right?
Yeah.
Now you can't differentiate between, okay, this is an AI tool or this is an automation tool.
It will be one and the
It
same.
will be one and the same. Automation is essentially because we, as a industry, as a profession, we never had data standards.
Right.
For example, telephone. 100 years ago, somebody could pick up a phone from here and, let's say, talk in Japan.
Right.
The voice will get converted into whatever that analog technology. Same technology worldwide, the same standard. We don't have those standards. So everybody had different tables, database structures. So we needed something to kind of exchange that data.
Right.
And that's because we did not follow these standards.
Yeah.
But AI takes away that need.
Yeah.
You know?
Although I
Mm,
would actually
mm,
argue that we do
mm,
have standards
mm,
underlying
mm,
accounting. At least here in Canada, we use
mm,
something called Giphy codes,
mm.
which, even though everyone might have their own standard chart of
Yeah. Mm,
accounts and being doing a slightly different income statement balance sheet
mm,
and a very different process from getting to client provided information over to
mm.
final financial
Yeah.
statements.
Mhm.
When we get to the end point of financial statements, because we have to report up back to the
Right.
government
Mhm.
using these standard Giphy codes,
Mhm.
the output is standardized, right? So
Right.
I think,
Mhm.
I mean, that also is a big fear for people too, is like, if there is standardization, and when we look at the accounting world, even though we have had we all what's interesting is we all get to the same end product. We all have our own ways of getting to that end product,
Mhm.
but we all use very standardized, systemized processes, which is why
Mhm.
automation, RPA,
Yep.
and AI can be such a big impact on our bottom lines in our business.
True.
But a lot of people have a fear that this is going to replace us, and that eventually the CRA is just going to be like, well, we or Canada Revenue Agency or the IRS in the US is going to say, well, we're just going to do this for you, and we're going to calculate what everyone owes and what all their business is in. You're just going to upload your bank statements and we'll take care of everything else. Do you have any fears that the rise of the AI accountant might mean the elimination of the accounting profession?
Interestingly, I wish I could have shown that screen now. I have this 2015 cartoon that I made.
Right,
A client going to an accountant's office, pretty much puzzled.
right,
And the accountant says, okay, I will review whatever you brought to me. And the client gives a tax return generated by an AI software.
right,
And the client feels this is not right. The accountant reviews it
right,
and says, okay, your tax return generated by your AI software is actually correct, and my review fee is $4,000, right? AI outputs have to be reviewed by clients, irrespective of how AI goes,
Right.
because you cannot make sense of the client's situation. AI is all about data,
Right.
and that data is already existing data.
Mm-hmm.
The data that your clients are creating because they are making those business decisions, hence the new data comes in. You are privy to that.
Right.
You're the ones who understand the context outside that data.
Yeah.
So it's not that the whole job will be replaced. Some of the tasks can get replaced. So essentially, we're looking at a process where we are going to be redefining what accountants do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not what accountants are.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's not going to be changing anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Mm.
the reality
Mm.
is, and the accounting profession has changed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we what we do has changed. We don't use T accounts anymore,
Right.
right? We
Yeah.
don't use ledger paper anymore,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that accountants are actually some of the best people at adapting and innovating. Even though we look at our industry and we think this is a stagnant industry who doesn't adapt and innovate, and because they always look at last year. But if you think about it, every year there's tax law changes,
Exactly.
right? And
Mhm.
we have to adapt to the tax law changes,
Exactly.
and we have no problem adapting to those changes,
Right.
right? Like we just consider that that's just part of what we do. We have to constantly be learning.
Yeah.
We have to be constantly taking our professional development
Right.
and learning and looking at what's coming out in the new budgets. What changes has our local government made. What new cases are there out. Look what happened with sales tax and the Wayfair versus South Dakota,
Yeah.
right? Like we are always evolving.
Yeah.
But yet it's funny, we think of ourselves and we think often of this industry as being really stagnant because they in some ways they don't evolve, yet in others they're constantly having to evolve. So it's just interesting to me that the sort of dichotomy that's in our industry. And it's I mean, I don't get why people are so intimidated by the technological changes. So we talked about the fear that the technology itself might be evolving too quickly, that people won't adapt to it. Have you seen any other fears for why people aren't adopting AI and in their practices?
Yeah. I think we are like a profession which likes to be in control.
Right.
The world constantly changes around us. The regulations, for
Hmm.
example, and we're the ones who are making sense. I just said, data is already existing. Now that's all past. We are always looking at what's happening around us, making sense of it, and applying to situations. So we have to be in the moment.
Right.
So anything that's in the moment is not finite. So it's always changing. So
Yeah.
that makes it difficult to control. So we're in that habit of making sure everything goes right. Right. AI is relatively new. Large language models, for example, external entities as far
Right.
as technology is
Yeah.
concerned. So we are not in control,
Right.
right? So we want to go slow. We want to see who else has implemented.
Right.
What are they implementing it for? What's the result? What did it really make a difference, or is
Right.
it just wasted time or
How
money?
did it do this? How did it figure out the
Right,
next logical word? We
right, right.
want to know the process.
Correct.
And with AI, you're not getting that.
Yeah, no, because AI you cannot control. Google CEO is on record. You cannot ever predict what AI will do the next,
Right.
or explain why did it do what it
Right.
did, right? But in the profession here, that is driven by numbers and actual compliant data. That is actually a good situation for us to be as a profession, because
Right.
it will be more reliable. But we still have questions like, okay, today suddenly the tax law changes.
Hmm.
AI tool has been created over the last 5 years on tax data that was based on the previous rule.
Right.
Now, if that generates something based on previous rules, how are we going to ever come to know whether the AI is right or wrong?
Right.
So how am I going to trust? And
Yeah.
I'm sure technologists will have answers to this. We don't have to really figure that out. I'm not at all concerned about what does the technology do, how is it going to evolve. Let that be done by technologists.
Right.
Or,
It's more how does it help me than how does it
exactly.
do it, right?
Correct. Exactly.
But it's interesting that as in a
Mm.
profession, we are so concerned about how does it do it.
Yeah.
And it often reminds me of, that I don't know if you've ever heard the story of the bananas and the monkeys with the banana on a pole and the experiment that was conducted. So it was a really interesting scientific experiment where the experimenters had a group of monkeys, and they had a banana at the top of the pole, and every time the monkey tried to climb the pole, they would spray it with a fire hose. And then it got to the point where if they introduced a new monkey who would try and climb up the pole, all the other monkeys had been trained, don't go up the pole, because
Mm.
if you do, you'll get sprayed with a fire hose.
Mm.
So they introduced a new monkey,
Mm.
and as the monkey goes to go up the pole, the other monkeys would grab it and pull it down
Right.
because they
Mm.
were afraid of the fire hose. Well, slowly but surely, they would take a monkey and replace it with a new monkey.
Mm.
And every time the new monkeys would come in, they would go up and they would climb the pole, and the monkeys that had been there before, who had been hosed down, would pull them down. Well, by the time they got to the experiment, they'd actually replaced every single monkey in the room who had ever been hosed down with a fire hose. So there wasn't one monkey in that room who had ever been sprayed down with a fire hose. Yet, anytime a monkey was introduced and would try and go up and to climb the pole, the other monkeys would pull it down for fear of what would happen, even though none of them had actually had any experience
Yeah.
themselves with the fire hose. And I think that that's a danger in our industry when we get so fearful and wanting to make sure that we're effectively pulling each other down from the pole, even though there may or may not be any valid reason to do so.
Yeah, it's a consequence model that all human beings follow.
Right,
If there are bad consequences, we become ultra cautious around it,
right.
and in the process, we kind of overlook the other 99 good consequences that we had.
Yeah,
We need to balance out. As long as you can figure out how to manage the risk around anything, you should be good. And what's the risk of trying an
right.
AI tool? Maybe not on live data, not on, let's say, a live tax return, right? Yeah. And if you file a live tax return generated by AI, and IRS comes back and or CRA comes back and says this was wrong, how are you going to explain and things like that, right? But then without experimenting, you're not going to get anywhere.
Right,
Mm.
absolutely. And we've got Joseph Davides is commenting. Just for context for the Canadians in the room,
Mm.
we annually publish a textbook of summaries of the changes and tweaks
Mhm.
for the year that is 500 pages long. Right. Now
Mm.
that's pretty intimidating, and I mean, there's a perfect example
Mm.
of where AI can come into place and help us as a profession to be able to understand and interpret those 500 changes. There's 500 changes. How many of those are going to impact my
Right,
existing
exactly.
client
Right.
base?
Mm.
Now we can leverage AI to be able to go in, analyze these 500 pages,
That's right.
understand the context of my business. We have to load it and train
Right.
it with the context of our
Right.
business.
Mhm.
But if we load it and train it with the context of our business, now it can pull out from those 500 pages the ones that might be most relevant to
That's
us.
right,
Right?
exactly. And that's where AI can be extremely efficient in doing that stuff
Yeah.
rather than somebody taking that and coding that into a tax. So that's why we had always had these problems that the next version or update of the tax software would come right at the beginning or the middle of the tax season
Right.
and frustrating all of us because it takes that much time to code everything and test everything, right?
Yeah.
If AI can do that pretty much in a controlled way, nothing like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely
Mm.
nothing like it. Although, I mean, we got another comment from
Mm.
Kasim here,
Mm.
who says, based on his discussions with small business owners,
Mm.
that and we've seen it in our own firm, that
Mm.
one of the one of the most common challenges
Mm.
that they encounter is to convince their employees to incorporate AI tools in their day-to-day process.
Mhm.
So, do you have any insights into how to overcome that sort of intrinsic
Resistance.
bias that
Mm.
employees might have to not wanting to change the status quo?
I think it's not about technology at all. It's
Right,
not about AI per se. It's about the risk that goes around it,
right,
or what happens if they use AI and something unknown happens. Who's going to be responsible?
right,
So I think it's a matter of saying, okay, here is my experimentation license for you.
right,
Go ahead and do it, and we will cover everything that goes wrong,
right.
and you will give you the credit for everything that goes right.
That goes right.
I think the bigger challenge is in their day to day stuff. If they are required to, let's say, put 90% of their utilization in, and there is very little time left for experimentation, and within that, you want people to experiment, you got to kind of dilute that a bit and make sure as a firm you own the entire responsibility for it.
Right,
That gives them that freedom to think that, "Yeah, let me try this, let me try that."
right. I love
And
that. Own the responsibility,
yeah,
but give the credit.
give the credit. Exactly.
Right,
And AI, as I said, I was just telling yesterday somebody, AI is not about the technology, it's about you and your imagination on how you're going to use it.
Right.
Large language model has immense capacity,
Hmm.
and that's why there are training tools and books, how to write prompts and all that. They're just telling you how to use the technology better.
Right.
That's all on your imagination, and for
Yeah.
that you need to know a little bit about it, right?
Hmm.
The same thing, any tool. For example, if you bought a new software, forget AI. Let's say AI was not there,
Right. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
would buy a software, you would test, all of you will test, your vendor will teach you how to do that. They will say, okay, here is how you run through the trials and all that, right? You
Right.
did all of that. That time the risk factor was not there because you could pull the plug anytime. And
Right.
you might think, okay, if I release AI, that's not going to let it to be pulled out. No,
Right.
that's not the way you're looking at, right? So that experimentation, risk taking ability, all of that just continues like any technology. AI
Right.
is no kind of exception to that.
Right. So
Mm.
it's just change management,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, correct.
And you have to build that into the culture of your organization,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
that's just
Mm.
something that you have to do. Now, I mean, you talk about imagination and being a really critical, important aspect of being able to leverage the benefits of artificial intelligence, which I couldn't agree with you more. But for those people who are looking for, help me, like, can you help me get that ball rolling? Can you get this flywheel spinning for me
Mhm.
and give me some ideas? You've got I think over 100 examples in your
Right.
book.
Correct.
Can you share with us maybe some common use cases where you've seen AI be implemented in other practices?
So some of the AI features, if I can call that a
Yeah.
feature, coming inside the tools, because I've been monitoring that quite long now, and there are big software companies in the profession that have declared their AI roadmaps,
Right.
and most of the times you're using at least one of those big softwares,
Right. Right. Like
and if you
QuickBooks, a big
QuickBooks,
one.
yeah, or sales tax, or whatever you call it,
Right.
audit, you look at the roadmap. Okay, it's all public information.
Hmm.
Then you know how they're going to be bringing in those features. They all actually say, okay, here is where the new features would come in, here is how it's going to look like,
Right.
right? More importantly, you're looking at data elements that you handle every single day.
Right.
If you input lots of bills or you bring in bank fees, for example, you're correcting, so that's your day-to-day bread and butter stuff, right?
Right.
That is where AI will make the most impact in terms of your productivity and utilization and accuracy and all that.
Right.
Now you try to figure out, is there any tool that can handle this mass?
Right.
There was this Harvard working paper just recently that said 43% of lower end tasks will be far more improved in performance versus 17% of the higher skill level staff.
Right.
So wherever you're applying judgment, you're trying to think through your entire expertise to apply the judgment versus where is data equal to data, those kinds of stuff,
Hmm.
there your efficiency gains will be higher. And most of the AI tools that I'm seeing in development are coming towards that mass of day-to-day stuff that you do. So
Right.
if you can figure out, here is where we go wrong most of the time,
Hmm.
here is what consumes 60% of our time, those are the starting points for you,
Right.
because that you are in your sleep, you can do that work, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's easier to figure out something goes wrong
Yeah.
versus a very very complex thing. Don't, let's say, throw extreme complex tax return into AI and let me see if I can do
Right.
things.
Right.
Don't do that at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
No, but I mean,
Mm,
what we've seen in
mm,
perfect examples, like Hector, I keep throwing him out there
mm,
because I think I'm so amazed by what a simple process he was
mm.
able to do by taking the financial statements,
Yeah.
depersonalizing them so that
Mm.
we're not putting client
Yeah.
confidential
Correct.
information in
Mm,
theory in there, sending it over and just saying, give me some analysis.
mhm.
And the quality of what it's able to come back
Yeah.
is amazing. And I think that's what's so interesting too is, I mean, I think a lot of us assumed that technology would evolve in a way that it would be really good at the number crunching
Mhm.
and the machine learning stuff,
Mhm.
not the creativity, not the language model. I think a lot of us didn't see the language models coming out as being the first wave of artificial
Yeah.
intelligence that would
Mm,
be implemented
mm,
into our practices. And as a group who is very focused historically on the numbers and any analysis that we were doing, that creativity was coming. um, it, that was where we perceived our value, and now that's a scary thing to some people, that
yeah.
that aspect that we thought could never be replaced, for it to be able to start doing some analysis, and the more context you give it, the more analysis it can provide. is scary for a lot of people, right? And um, that's something that I think that fear is something that we have to figure out how to overcome as an industry, and whether it's something that we do need to be afraid of, because we have seen that the AI can do an amazing job 80% of the time, but that it can hallucinate, that
Yeah.
um, it can just make stuff up that is completely irrelevant.
Yep.
And how do we make sure and cross validate that what's going out to customers is actually meets our quality control standards?
Correct.
What regulations are our governing bodies going to put on us around what types and uses how we can use AI?
Correct. Yeah.
What is our insurance and our professional liability insurance going to cover? Is it okay for us to provide information that's been
Correct.
generated by AI?
Mhm.
There's so many things around uh, you know uh, the artificial intelligence, and whether we can and how we should use it, and what kind of privacy information. What are your thoughts when we start entering that realm um, of AI? Like, can we trust it? Should we trust it? Do we need to validate it? And what information should we be loading into AI?
Was it Ronald Reagan, the president, who said trust but verify?
Trust but verify.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that is coming true right now.
Right.
Okay, in the AI world.
Hmm.
But in the same way, let's say you get a license, a CPA license, for
Right.
example. You're allowed to sign something. Your clients hold you responsible for everything,
Right.
whether you have a license or not. Right? When you're doing a fiduciary work for them, and nobody looks at what technology you use to sign off on what you sign.
Right.
Right? You're still responsible.
Yes.
AI, treat it as another technology, but if you're going to be signing off,
You
you
better
better
verify.
verify,
Yeah.
right? And it can become a bit difficult because explainability is a challenge in
Hmm.
AI, because AI cannot tell you how did it come to a conclusion like the output that it gave you.
Right.
You cannot go back and reconstruct the steps because
Right.
it's such a massive thing that's going on behind the scenes in that black box.
But you can tell you, but whether what it came out is
Correct,
right.
correct,
So you got to be cross checking and
correct.
like, there should be no automation that is automatically sending this out without you verifying it.
Exactly true. There's no like 100% automation. You are just a pass through entity.
Hmm.
That's not going to happen. There was a case in
The
law
lawyer one,
industry, yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
So somebody produces six case references, which is AI hallucinating, as they say, because all that AI is doing is looking for the next plausible word, right? So
right,
it will pick and choose everything. There's a fascinating explanation on that. But from an accountant's point of view, getting into this realm is just about speed,
right,
and that speed is very different when it comes to AI.
right,
We could figure out how a normal tool programmed software is developing. You would always get future thing, this date, the new version is coming, and this and that. In AI is like a new version every single minute
right,
based on what's getting trained into AI.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you don't have control over speed, and that speed is, and of course, as they say, if you're in control, you're not going at the right speed, you're slow. Right? Right.
yeah. And with AI, you really are building your airplane in the sky, right?
Exactly correct. Yeah.
But like, I mean, for some people that would be just too much to overcome.
Yeah.
For you, do you have any AI pet peeves or things that drive you nuts about artificial intelligence, that are, or just even stereotypes about AI that you have pet peeves of?
Yeah, stereotypes. The biggest one is AI will replace accountants. AI will replace this. I have been chasing the dictionaries of the world.
Right.
How the heck do they define accountant and accounting? Go and look at the definition. It's like archaic. And the reference in one of the dictionaries is the year 1500, and they're continuing that definition. This is not what AI accountants do, right?
Right.
I've been running a poll for the last few years, going to non-accountants.
Mhm.
When you hear the word accountant, what comes to mind? It says balance sheet and tax return. Still the same result.
Right.
That's the perception that has been created. And maybe everybody looks up dictionaries, right?
Yeah.
And they think, oh, this is what accountants do. That's not what it is. And from that angle, I think the researches that go on might be thinking those are the things accountants do, and hence what's the impact on that of AI.
Right.
And that's going to be wrong in any case. That's
Yeah.
not everything that accountants do, right? So that's my biggest pet peeve. It's like too much of astrological prediction, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
Bishop, what do you think the definition of accountant should be?
I like the definition of lawyers. interpreting information for the client's objective.
For the benefit of the
For
client.
the, yeah, that's how dictionary defines lawyers,
Right.
right? Why it did not define accountant like that? I don't understand, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I like that.
Mm.
We're interpreting information for the benefit of our customers.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. That
Mm.
that is truly the heart of what we do.
Exactly.
Interpreting, analyzing, and providing insights.
Yeah. In fact, we also go one step ahead and we make judgment calls for our clients. We know this is how it should be, this is how it should be tax treated, because
Right.
that's our domain of knowledge.
Hmm.
So you don't explain that too much to non-accountant. They're going
Right.
to be very difficult for them to understand. Right?
Hmm.
So you make those decisions for your clients and be an owner of that decision.
Right.
So we are putting our neck on the wire every single moment. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So what about things like, do you have any fears with AI? Does the concept of the singularity scare you at all? Or are you just all in where, no fears at all when it comes to artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I'm all in as long as AI is in good hands.
Right.
Technology is
But
always.
how do you know whether it's
We
a good
don't
hand?
know.
Yeah.
We don't know. Hopefully, the people who are responsible for it, the governments, the creators of AI.
Yeah. Because it's not the governments, right?
Yeah, so
You know,
governments will put some regulations, like for example,
but the governments
autonomous
are going to be
cars.
too slow to be able to,
Yeah.
like, by the time they put in regulations, it will have evolved and changed,
Yeah,
right?
for example, autonomous cars. Why there are no licenses? That okay, now you don't need, let it be, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
still control.
Yeah.
That's why you have to touch the Tesla
Yeah,
steering
yeah.
wheel all the time, right?
Right.
Okay, but those are the people in the power to make ethical things happen.
Right.
The deep fake that we talk about,
Yeah.
3 minutes of audio and it can speak like you
Yeah.
or in your voice. Those are the things. While it might be good in some aspects,
Right.
how do you control that? And for a layman, for one single person, human being, it's not easy to control anything.
Yeah.
You can be only a user.
Right.
Right.
And the reality is, with all this amazing innovation that we're getting out of artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
it's benefiting both the good and the bad.
That's
Right.
right. Yeah.
So there's nefarious players out there who are going to be able to leverage. And in fact,
Mm.
I would argue that the nefarious players are probably more apt
Yeah.
to adopting this technology and innovating with it.
Mm.
It's those people, the white hat players in the world who are, more conservative and want to make sure it's done right before they implement it.
That's right.
Whereas those nefarious players are like, no, let me get every tool I can to take advantage of people.
Oh,
Unfortunately.
absolutely. Any technology, you saw the antivirus software.
Right.
The
Yeah.
virus creators were at one step ahead always, right?
Yeah.
Right. The same way, people chase money, but the fraudsters are the one who reach there first. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Right. So this is always going to happen, irrespective whether it's AI or not. All technology is like that. In bad hands, the technology is always evil. Right.
Right. Right.
But then, how do you control of that? Especially considering that AI is like an uncontrollable technology.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. So we got another question from the audience here. It says, does AI open up any new avenues for accountants that have till now been out of their reach?
Yeah, see, from intrinsic look at what AI technically is, you're looking at AI's ability to learn from absolutely colossal amounts of data that no human being, no single software could ever do.
Right.
So, from that angle, generating those insights is always going to be very much useful in terms of creating new services. For example, audits. We always did sample audits, 2%, 3%, whatever that sample was, and then we drew conclusions based on that. Would you ever say that that was 100% correct conclusion? You would say based on our knowledge
Based on our
of
knowledge,
a
right.
limited set. But here is a chance for doing 100% concurrent audit. Processing capacity and all that stuff is already there, cheaper now, right? So those things can help, like continuous tax strategy evolution for a given client, because as transactions are happening, you can see where things are going and
Right.
apply new law. Compliance, continuous tax compliance, continuous audit, and hence continuous monitoring of likely fraudulent events.
Right.
There are tools that
Yeah.
that are being marketed, saying that the general 10-year experienced auditor would find 5 cases like this. Our tool can find 8 cases like this because we go through 100% data. Like, so those things are of course beneficial to
Right.
the end client, and who can give that? Only an accountant can give that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, the
Mm.
ability to load more data, to do more, to be able to be more accurate, more timely in real time is a huge advantage that you've got. And also, like you said, is like, you know, we talked earlier about, the ability for me now to have an avatar of my father,
Mm.
to be able to create a GPT based on my dad.
Mm.
And we talked about the company that's out there that's able to take an entire social media presence of
Yeah.
someone and create a effectively what was probably a large language model based
Yeah.
off of that person.
Right.
And that was a very expensive technology a
Yeah.
year or two ago.
Yeah.
It's now available to every single person, even to the
Correct.
point where I am building right
Mm.
now a GPT
Mm.
based on my father, and I'm able to pull anything and everything, any newspaper article he was ever in on, all his social media content that he ever had, and I'm able to load it into this GPT
Yeah.
and be able to have it answer and provide information to me
Mm.
using the knowledge and information that has been provided, which I would never ever be able to do without
Right.
the benefit of artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. The same way, let's say, your firm has been advising your clients for, let's say, 10 years.
Mhm.
If you have the access to that data, all those emails and whatnot, right?
Right.
If you put all of that, it's your firm specific advisory data.
Yeah.
Put that in chat GPT, or maybe a private model on your
Well, that's
query.
I've created a private GPT. You know what's really
Mm.
interesting that I'm doing right
Mm.
now? I just started doing it. Is so I'm taking all of my staff evaluations, my annual peer evaluations, taking all of our analytics and our KPIs, and I'm putting it into the GPT, and I'm creating a GPT with the knowledge of my specific entity
Yeah.
to start providing me guidance on, like, I'm building a mentor and a coach to help me optimize my individual practice
Mm.
and be able to analyze all of this information that I'm pulling in from a variety of sources.
So
Right?
now look at it this way. You get let's say, a new staff, or you promote somebody from a role to another role, which suddenly becomes more analytical
Yeah.
as a job demand. Now, all of your firm's intellect is in that GPT. Now that person can go to that GPT and say, if this was the client situation, what would the firm have done?
Right.
And
Right.
that knowledge can be extracted instantly.
Well,
Mm.
I mean, absolutely, because we're
Mm.
even loading in, like, we have a training library that we have that we
Yeah.
use called Get Guru. We're able to export our training templates from Get Guru into a PDF and then
Mm.
load that PDF. So this GPT has all the knowledge of our entire business, all the knowledge of the processes that are our internal training. So you're able to ask it anything about our business
Yeah.
and be able to get insights into, like, what are our workflows, what are our processes, when you encounter this problem, where do you go, and it can reference you back to those
Correct.
GPTs.
Yeah.
It's incredibly powerful, and we're at the
Correct.
tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is. It's like a workflow software that has possibly handled a billion workflows so far.
Yeah.
A new person can go in and say, I want to do a month end close, give me the checklist. It will generate because
Yep.
it's gone through those iterations like a million times,
Right.
right?
But
Yeah.
it's also
Mm.
little
Mm.
things like,
Mm.
so one of the little things I did, and
Mm.
apologize to my staff who are
Mm.
listening now,
Yeah.
is we just had our staff Christmas party. I had to write Christmas cards to everyone. So what I had to do is now it's got all of this knowledge of my clients or of my team, and including all their strengths, their weaknesses, the areas that we're looking to improve. And I asked it to write me personalized Christmas card messages, and it was actually able to pull in all of the analysis from their peer evaluations
Mm.
to be able to help me create
Wow.
Christmas cards that
Okay.
were personalized, that had comments about things that they had done
Mhm.
for the organization already, which is definitely taking a
Imagine
bit
this
of
the other way around, Andrew. If your staff is recording your interactions or pulling all the emails, putting in chat GPT, and now thinks, okay, this is the situation. How should I ask Andrew to
yeah.
get a permission? Chat
Well,
GPT might tell, right?
Well, and this is the other thing
Mm.
too, is like we're like, I'm loading into it, like, not only like our peer evaluations, but we've done those analysis where, like, the personality assessments,
Uh-huh.
and we share them with everybody. Like, we
Mm.
want everyone to know each other's personalities, but
Yeah.
they don't really look at those things and
Yeah.
try and
Yeah.
develop a question to better
Yeah.
interact
Yeah.
with my colleague.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
now they'll be able to do that when we have, like, personality assessments. So, like, we can be able to, like, help me draft a question to Andrew,
Mm.
the boss, which is going to be able to take into account his personality and everything.
Mm.
It's incredibly
It's in-
powerful if you can load it with if
Yeah.
you can train it with the right information.
There
Right?
is a tool for that online. that tracks all your social media footprint and actually says if you want to send a sales email to this person, this is what you should.
Right,
If he's
right.
your colleague, this is what you should
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. That's
Crystal knows.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Mm.
which Crystal knows, which
Yeah.
I do use, and I love that.
Yeah.
And that's how we do our personalities is
Right.
through Crystal knows.
Right. Correct.
So speaking of that, that sort of brings us to, we've only got about 5 minutes left,
Okay.
but do you have any favorite AI applications? Crystal Knows is a great example of one that I absolutely love. It's a great plugin for LinkedIn. If you're using LinkedIn, you really need to have Crystal Knows. It's great for sales analysis. It's great for writing custom emails. It's great
Yeah.
for understanding your internal staff. Do you have any other tools that you like?
Yeah, I do like some of the image generation tools. Those are built into the likes of Canva and all
Right.
that, right? It's just searching for images. Now you can create images. So essentially, it's DALI 2 and
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
Well, it's way
Yeah.
more powerful than
Way
DALI
more.
2 because you
Yeah.
can take
Yeah.
stuff out, you can
Right.
edit people out.
Right.
And if you haven't seen it, go back and
Mm.
check one of our first episodes, which we
Mm.
did on Canva, where we
Mm.
had a lab
Mm.
showing all the AI features with
Right.
their Magic Studio. It is
Right.
incredibly powerful.
It is. It is. So from tools perspective, I don't have any favorites per se because I
Mhm.
know most of the tools are in evolution stage.
Right.
By the time
But
you
I'm gonna
decide
put you on
something,
the
yeah,
spot.
yeah,
ChatGPT, Claude, or what's Google's
Bard.
Bard?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm waiting for Gemini to
You're
come
waiting
in.
for Gemini.
Yeah. Right. It struck the chord in me because I have a home in India. The apartment name is Gemini.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
It was built just for you.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing, and I guess maybe for people who want to get your book, is the best place to go and get a copy of this book on Amazon,
Yeah, that's on Amazon. It's available in many countries on local Amazons of that country.
right?
So
And if they want to connect with you, LinkedIn is probably the
LinkedIn is the best to connect with me.
right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
and yeah, if you're on LinkedIn, connect. Hopefully, share this with your community.
Mm.
Now, interestingly, we've got a few more questions
Mhm.
here. Um, uh, well, my colleague again, Kasim, is pointing out that he just got a preview of Copilot.
Mhm.
Have you played around with Copilot yet?
A little bit. I did see that Copilot, and I think that will be even more interesting
Right.
because it will get integrated within on so many things. It's
It's
not
that
like
conversion you keep
yeah,
talking about, right?
confluence, right? That's what
Confluence. Yeah.
confluence.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's the key word there.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I mean, I'm really interested to
Mm.
try it out. I still haven't seen it come
Mm.
across my desk yet
Mm.
here on my computer. I'm dying to try it, so I was curious if you'd had a chance to get a hand on it, but I guess not. So if we were to leave the audience with some parting words of wisdom and some tips for actually going out, um, you know, crossing the chasm and implementing AI into their practice, what would those words of wisdom be, and how should they get started?
I think from what I'm seeing, accountants are actually at the forefront of all this technological evolution. Come what may, whatever people say,
Hmm.
and they're obviously looking to learn from each other. If you're part of any group, any association, and those are kinds of people who are already doing lots of AI sessions, events, meetings,
Yeah.
go and get in there, because what I see is people sharing knowledge very quickly,
Yeah.
easily, without really thinking that you're a competitor, because everybody's in the same boat. We all want to do good things with AI. We want to do it quickly, and we got to learn from each other.
Right.
You have a choice to do it solo and experiment and take a
Mhm.
year, but don't do that.
Okay, maybe one
Mm,
follow-up question to that.
mm.
Do you have any people that you listen to, or any podcasts or anything that you'd recommend on artificial intelligence, or
Yeah, I
books, or
do.
anything?
Yeah, I do look at Jason Stats, for
Yeah.
example, because that's very much like a technical thing
Yeah.
or very much a practical thing to do.
Yeah.
Although it's kind of based on certain tools and all that, but
Right.
I
But he
do.
also presents it so well in
Yeah,
such a funny
exactly.
way, and
Yeah, well, anyway,
his
it's just
videos are
good. Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
and plus he invests a lot of time in actually doing things
Yeah.
before he can tell. Hector is, of course, pretty much ahead of the game,
Yeah.
right?
Mark Wickersham.
Yeah, Margaret question. But I do follow some technological institutes, MIT, for example.
Right.
So those are the people who do little heavy duty stuff,
Mm,
but that's really cool in terms of understanding what it is. And then plenty of courses now. LinkedIn, for example, has those learning courses, right?
right.
Google has a free course on multiple AI modules now.
Right.
That's not too difficult at all.
Hmm.
So those are things that generally I would have people look at, because instead of really hearing it from somebody else, which is possibly a colored view,
Right.
and you're going straight to the
The
source.
source.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And like, is there any specific areas or skills that people need to build up to be able to adapt AI? Like, there's all this talk about, becoming a prompt engineer and learning how to prompt properly.
Mhm.
Do you think that that's an important skill set that people need to be
Yeah,
working about, or will that eventually just be replaced because it's in the technology anyways?
yeah. So I feel, and I've been saying this for quite some time. You don't need to be a technologist to learn AI. You're
Yeah.
not coding for AI.
Yeah.
You're trying to use AI,
Hmm.
and for that, just to know, what's machine learning, for example.
Right.
How does data get into training modules of AI?
Right.
What does it learn? How does it learn? And hence, how does it work? If you get this flow, then it's much easier to really grasp any AI tool,
Yeah.
right? So the
Absolutely.
core building blocks of AI, the computer vision, how it works, the language, large language model, what's tokenization,
Right.
and it's not your data or your social security number that goes in.
Yeah.
It's tokenized. Nobody
Yeah.
can figure out what it is. But
Right.
how does the model know which tokens to pick as the next token?
Right.
Those kinds of little technical, but not difficult to understand.
Right. And it's easy to adopt, and
Yeah,
it's going to become even easier.
yeah,
And the reality is, I keep asking follow-up questions because I want to keep this conversation going, but
yeah.
we are already over time.
Mhm.
So I want to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to join us in person. And I'm going to continue this conversation after I let you guys go.
Good.
But thank you for joining us. And
Thank you
we'll
for
be
having me.
back again next week with another amazing guest. So thanks, everyone, and bye for now.